Today we will be modelling this low poly cartoon lamppost that you see on the screen. So without much further ado, let's get modelling. Okay, so as always, if you look in the bottom left corner, you will see my screencast keys. This shows you what mouse inputs and key presses I make. This will make it a lot easier to follow along through the videos. So let's go into front orthographic view, and we're pressing numpad 1 to go into our front orthographic view. And now we want a cube, so let's press Shift A, mesh and cube, and that inserts a cube into our scene. Now we want this cube to sit on this red line with the origin point at the bottom to make it easier to scale. So let's go into edit mode with tab. We're going to press G to grab, Z to restrict it to the Z axis, and 1 to just move it up 1 unit. Enter to confirm. Let's go back into object mode with tab. And now, as you can see, it's sitting on the red line with its origin point right there. So now we need to scale this down to the size that we need. So we press S to scale and bring it down. Now, as always with transforming in object mode, you need to apply the scale. Otherwise, you have issues with bevels, insets, and other tools within Blender. So let's press Control and A, and we're going to select scale, and that applies the transforms. Right, so let's go into edit mode. And we're going to press 3 to go into face select. And we'll select that bottom face. Let's go back into the front view so we can see. And we're going to scale it out. And then we have our little base there. About right, I think. I might actually select everything. And I'm going to press S to scale. And I'm going to press Shift Z. Restrict it to the Z axis. And I'm just going to fine tune that size. I think that looks quite good. Okay, so now we need to make the post going up. Let's take a look and select that top face, and I'm going to press I to insert and bring that in, and we're going to need it about there. Bring it back into front view, and if we just press E, it should now extrude on the Z axis to about there. No problem. Excellent. What do we need now? Let's see. We need our little metal piece going here, our bracket. So let's scroll in a little bit and press Control R and create an edge loop. And we'll bring that edge loop up to out there. If we press Control B and pull the mouse out until it's about square, I'd say about there. And I'm going to bring that down just a little bit with G and Z, just a touch like so. We've now added 2 edge loops to the top of this cube. So now if we press Alt and E and select extrude face along normals, what will happen is now is as we move up and down, it will bring it out of the model. It won't scale upwards and it won't scale at a funny angle. You might actually need to stretch that a little bit. So press S and Z and bring it up a little bit. Oh, and this is a mistake. So let's press Control Z to bring that back down. Now, I've got that loop of faces selected there, and I want to select the loop around it. I could go about it alt-clicking around the edges and things, but an easier way to do this, excusing me, would be to press Control and plus, and that basically extends your selection by 1 face. And then we've got that all selected now. So let's press S and Z and stretch that up a touch. I think that looks about right. So let's see, what else do we need? We need this piece here. So again, we're going to select the face on the side there. So let's press 3 to go into face select. Select that face and I to inset. Let's bring it into about there. That should do. Now we can extrude that along the x-axis like so. And how long do we want it? I'd say about there. Now that looks a little bit flat, so let's adjust that. And what we want to do is Alt and left click on the edge there so it selects around, and press S and press Shift X to exclude the x-axis, and let's bring it in. And I think about there would be much better. Might need it a little bit longer. Let's bring it out a little bit more. So let's select the end face, GX, and bring it across. Now I want to get this into position ready for adding the base. So let's select everything and G, X. We'll move it just along here, I think. Now we want to take a look at the shape of this. As you can see on this model, we've given it a bit of deformation. We've made it a little bit more crooked. Gives it a bit of character, makes it look a lot less modeled and a lot more organic. So let's press Control and R and give it 2 edge loops. And then what we simply do is we take the top of the model, and if we go into X-ray mode with Shift Z, sorry, not X-ray mode, this is wireframe mode. X-ray mode is another mode which allows you to click through the mesh. Let's select all of the top pieces, and from the right orthographic view, G, Y, and just move that back just a touch. And then we have, if we go back into solid view, we have a bit of a crooked shape there, but it still needs to go back. So let's go back into Shift Z into wireframe and select this bottom piece, and we're going to go G and X, bring that back slightly. And I think I'm going to select this piece here, G, X, and bring that forward slightly. Makes it a little bit more crooked, gives it a bit more character. We can do that with a lot of the others. And in fact, what I'm going to do is I'm going to kick with that selected. I'm going to bring that up slightly. GX, bring that back slightly. Make that slightly tilted. Right, now we need another bracket on here, and we need a brace to go across here. So let's go into front orthographic, zoom in a little bit, into edit mode. Control R, add an edge loop and move it to about there. Control B to scale it up, and it needs to be there. Alt E along normals and to bring it out. And it looks like I need to make that a little bit wider. So press Control plus SX and bring that out just a touch there. I think that looks about right. Let's add a brace. So we're going to add a cube, Shift A and cube. And we're going to bring it up to about here. Scale it right down like so. Yeah, it needs to be a lot smaller. GX there. That looks about right. Let's pan around a little bit. Go into right orthographic. And GY, move it so that it's central like so. Now we need to select this end face right there with 3 and selecting the face. And we just do a G and we just bring it up. Now let's give it a little bit of character with 2 edge loops like so. Control R and scroll up once to give you 2 edge loops. And G, Z to bring it down just slightly, give it a little bit of a curve. And there we have our model. And I think that needs to be a little bit thicker as well. So let's go and select these 3 faces here. G, Z, and move it down like so. And then that brings that out there. So if we go into edge mode with 2, let's press that. Go into front orthographic with 1 on the numpad. Just move that so that it's about the right place. And there we have our brace. Okay, so we have the main body of our model. Let's start adding materials. Now, I've already got my materials added to this file, so I just need to go down to the Material tab, press the plus button to create a material slot, and then on this little drop-down menu here, select Main Palette. And as you see, it's a bit of a mess. It needs to be UV unwrapped and all of the different areas added to the correct colors. So let's go to the UV editing screen, and in edit mode, select everything, press U and reset, and that resets everything so that each individual polygon on the model is a square taking up the whole of the texture space. And now if we press A over the texture space, press S to scale and 0, bring it down to a tiny little dot. We can now start adding this to our colours. So let's see what we need to do. First things first, I'm going to press Alt and left click on that edge there, press Control, bring it up. I'm then going to press Alt, Shift, left click on that one, and Shift, left click there. And then do the same, Alt, Shift, left click on there. And as always happens, my screencast keys have stopped working. This is a bug with screencast, and all I need to do is go to the screencast, turn them off and turn them on again, and hopefully they will display again. Excellent. Right, so I'm selecting all of the wood parts on this model. So let's Alt Shift and click on this edge loop, Shift click on this edge loop. This last one, because it's actually a separate piece within the same mesh, hover over it and press L, not K, L. And there we have our wood parts. So let's move them over to an appropriate little wooden area. Let's see, there might do. Yes, and I think that looks about right. So as you can see, we've got our little dot, which is our wood, right there in the brown area there. So let's go back into the 3D display, and I'm going to hide this wood now, because then all that I've got left is what I need in metal. And I'm going to take that, and using G over the UV editing window, press G and move it, and I'm going to put it into an area that I think would be nice for the metal. And can't quite see it as it is. I think that's a little bit dark. So let's move it to more of that sort of a colour, and that's much better. You can't see it quite right now because we're in material preview, but if I put it into rendered view and turn on the lights, see, that should, in theory, be much better. And it looks a bit more metallic. I think that looks about right for that. See the metallic coming through. So the final part needed for the main part of the lamppost is to head over to modeling. With the model selected, go to our modifier properties with the little spanner icon there, click add modifier and add a bevel. And you can see that's quite a large bevel on there. I want to cycle that up so it's got one extra segment. And then I want to take the amount value, and I'm going to change it to 0.01. Let's see how that looks. I think that looks quite nice. Yep, that looks quite nice, but you can still see jagged edges. And the reason for that is we haven't shaded smooth. So let's go right click and shade auto smooth. And we now have a nice smooth model. See how much better the light reflects off of that metal. How much better it actually looks. It's been a bit messed up at the moment because of the glow off of that. And that's what all these extra shadows are. But once we get this finished and that hidden, it shouldn't be a problem. Okay, right. So we're going to apply that. Don't need that modifier on there. We're not going to change it at all. And we need to bring it into front orthographic. I'm going to switch it back to material preview. Easier to work with. We need to start working on our lantern. So let's create a cube. Shift A, mesh, and cube. And again, we need to turn the screencast off and on again to get them working again. There we go. So let's position this cube where we want it. GZ, we want it sort of, I'd say about there. GX, bring it across. What I want to do with this one, I want the origin point on the top because I'm going to be scaling up to that top. So let's go into edit mode, press 3 to go into face mode, click that top piece, and press Shift and S, cursor to selected. I'm going to come back out into object mode, right click and set origin 3D cursor. That's a second way to move your 3D cursor, your origin point on the model. It's now at the top. So when I scale it, it will now scale in to about there. And I'm going to be bringing that right the way down. I need a tiny little cube like that. And SZ, I think that might actually be a little bit too small. But if we go into right orthographic, GY, move it in. Let's press S, Shift Z, bring it out a little bit further, and I think that's about right. As always, Control A, scale. Make sure you apply your scale. So we now need to make the little canopy at the bottom. I'm going to go into edit mode, select the bottom face, into front orthographic, and press E. Extrude that down to about the location that we want it. So probably about there. And then we want to scale it out. And I'm trying to think what sort of size we want. Probably about there should be about right. Now we need to add the ridges in this piece. So let's press Control R and put in 2 edge loops. We left click to set, right click to confirm. We press Control B, we can make a bevel like so. We just want it out touch, just a tiny touch, because then what we want to do is we want to clear our selection and we just want to select the top 2 edge loops and press S to scale, Shift Z to exclude the Z axis and just bring it out so. And that gives us our nice little corrugated shape on the roof of the lantern. So next part, we need to create this middle piece. So we select the bottom face, 3 and go into face mode, select the bottom face, press I to inset and bring it in. And how far do we need it? About there, I'll say, and I think that's about right. Let's press E to extrude and bring it down to about there. And scale to bring it in just a touch. Now let's inset the pieces for the glass by Alt left clicking on that face loop. Now we press I, but when we do that, all the faces are inset as one. Now if we press I again, that means it works on individual faces. So let's bring that in and select with left click, and we have our panels for our glass. If we press Alt and E and select along normals, then bring it down to bring it in, we inset those and we have the main part of our lantern. Let's just add the decoration on the bottom. So hit the bottom face there, select the bottom face, press E and then right click immediately and then scale to scale it out. Then press E to bring it down just a touch, I to inset, E to bring it down, and then scale it in. And maybe that's a little bit big, a little bit big, but GZ, bring that up to about there. And then again, Alt left click this, press S, and then Shift Z to bring it out. We're just going to bring it out. And if you hold Shift, it makes it a bit finer movement. That's about there. And there we have our lamp. So let's add our materials to the lamp. Go to the material tab, hit plus to create a new material slot, and select main palette. In edit mode, select everything, press U, R to reset it, and let's go to UV editing. I'm going to press the period key on the numpad to zoom in. Over the UV editing screen, press A to select, S to scale, 0 to bring it down to a tiny little dot. And I'm going to also bring that down to the similar sort of metal color that we had for the brackets around this sort of area, I think. And that makes everything that metal color. So let's just select all 4 of these faces, and we need to bring this across, and I'm going to bring it across over to this orange over here, which is our emissive area. It gives that nice orange glow. Isn't that lovely? Really nice. So next we need to create the chain that it's hanging from. So we're going to create the chain using toruses. So let's press Shift A, Mesh, and Torus. Okay, so we don't need as many vertices. We don't need it as big and smooth as that. So let's drop this down to 8 major segments and 8 minor segments. And that should make it Just about right. Okay, so it needs to be a lot smaller. So let's go into edit mode and scale it all the way right down. And we need it to fit on the top of this. So first things first, let's GY and bring it back to about the middle there. Like so, and I think that's about right. And scale it down even further, and it just needs to just about fit on there. That's about right. Let's RY90, and might need to be a tiny bit smaller, just a tiny bit. And there we have our first link, and that's the bit that sets it into the top. So let's go back into edit mode, Shift D to duplicate, and we're going to RZ90, rotate on the Z axis at 90 degrees, G to grab, and Z to restrict it to the Z axis and move that back up. And if we select everything with A, we can Shift D to duplicate, right click, G, Z, and bring it up. And again, one last time, Shift D, G, Z, and bring it all the way up. And that should bring it up to the top there. I think we're going to need one more loop in there. So let's go back into there. We're just going to select this loop here, Shift D, and G, Z to bring it up, like so. A to select everything, G, Z, and bring it down a bit. And I think this last loop, this one, go S and bring it out, SY, bring it out a bit, give it a bit more of a shape to it. There we go, we have our chain, so we need to color it. So let's go back in, select everything, U reset, A to select everything over the UV window, S to scale, and 0 to bring it down to a little dot. And then again, we move it down to our metallic color. But obviously it's not displaying on the model, so let's go down to a material tab, plus to create a material slot, and then in the drop down, select main palette. So there we have our chain, and we have our lamp post with a lamp hanging from a chain. Now we just need to add some ground to make it look nice, and we will be done. So let's make sure we're in object mode. We're going to press Shift and C, Shift and C, bring the cursor back to the world origin, and then Shift A, mesh, circle, and we're going to create a circle. And if we just scale that up and bring that up to about the sort of size that we want, about there, make sure we press Control A, scale. Let's go into the mesh and go into vertex mode with 1, making sure everything is selected. We need to turn our screencast keys on again. One day I will remember every time I do these videos. And if we go up to base, we can find grid fill. And if we hit grid fill, that fills that in a grid. Now we want a lot more on that. Let's see. No, we want it to show the maximum. Okay, that should do. And now if I right click and click subdivide, I can turn that up to say 3. To give it a bit of geometry to shape. And here's where the fun bit occurs. Going up to our proportional editing, we're going to change the proportional editing to sphere. And then if I press the backslash on the numpad, it will isolate just that object so I can work on that object. Let's see that. I'm going to select the central vertex and then press backslash on the numpad to come back out of that. Front of the graphic view, 1 on the numpad. And I want to turn on a proportional editing. Now to do that, you can either press this button up here or press O on the keyboard. And now what that does is if I press G to grab this vertex that I've got selected, you see it creates a circle around the cursor. This is our sphere of influence. And basically what it does is it proportionally edits as you move. It moves the vertices within that sphere of influence proportionally to the vertex that you got selected. So let's scroll it up so it's just around the edges there without going over, because you get that. And then just bring it down to roughly where we want it, about there, I'd say. And I'm just going to isolate the axis by hitting Z, that it doesn't move all over the place. So I'm going to click, and there we have our bumps. Now what I want to do is I want to use the isolation mode by pressing backslash on the numpad, and that isolates just this model so we can only see this model. So let's turn it to material, that's it. Now what I want to do is press 7 and press C to get up my circle select, and I just want to select all of these vertices in the middle without getting all of the edge around the edge there. And now what I want to do is I want to deselect. Oops. If you press the middle mouse button, that deletes what you've selected. I want to press right click to come out of that. I want to deselect about 30% of these. So I'm going to go up to select and select random, and then make sure it's on this drop down menu. It is on deselect. And you can't quite see that, can you, sir? Because of the screen captures keys. So let's move them out of the way. We change this to 0.66, and then that is deselected about a third of those there. Now, with proportional editing still on, I want to press G and Z just to bring them down, but I want to bring that cursor down really, 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 really small. So it's just affecting a few, and we only want to move down a tiny, tiny bump, like so. Now what I want to do is, again, select random. This time change it to 0.5, so it deselects another third of the overall vertices. Press G, Z, and bring that down slightly. Different value to before. We've got a nice little bumpy section there, right? So now in edit mode, if we go to face select, press A to select everything, press U and R to reset. That resets the UVs. Over in the UV window, press A, scale, S to scale, and 0 to bring it down into a little dot. Then we need to apply a material. So let's create a material slot, drop down menu and choose palette. That's our palette there. And now we can choose where to put our colours. And I'm going to make these a darker brown, quite a dark sort of brown there. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the deselect tool again. Select random, make sure it's on deselect. I'm going to change that to 0.75. And then I'm going to, over in this window, with those faces selected in the UV window, GX, and just bring it along. Now I've got proportional editing on. I'm going to turn that off by pressing O. GX, and just bring it on just a little bit like that. You've got a slightly different tone on there. And then we're going to use that tool again, because what we want to do is select and deselect them again with select random. And this time 0.5, and then G and X, bring it on a little bit further. There's a little bit more variation in there. And then again, the same process, select random. We're going to leave it on 0.5 this time. And GX, and bring it along a bit further. We've got lots of variations. So let's come out of isolation mode with the backslash button. And look at that. It's not quite the same as the one I did before, but I think this actually looks a little bit better. And I think the last thing I'm going to do is go back in to there on edit mode and click vertex. And then if we can find it, there should be a smooth vertex button there. And that just rounds them off a little bit more. And then again, in object mode, right click, shade auto smooth. That should make it all nice. Got a nice little piece of ground there. And for the final part of this video, let's add some grass using the particle system. So first we need to create a grass model. So let's press Shift A, mesh, and add a plane. I'm just going to GX, move that to the side there, and then press the period key on the numpad to zero in on it. If we go into top view and in edit mode, press S and X and scale it down to there. I'm going to add an edge loop there and scale that out. An edge loop here, scale that out a little bit less. I'm going to select the top edge there, scale that right in. I'm going to put one more edge loop in here, and I'm going to G, Y, and move that down. to give it more of a shape there and go like so. And now I'm going to select these three. I'm going to bevel them. I'm going to press Control B and bevel them up like so, just to smooth them off. And I think that should be just about right. Now, I need to randomize these a little bit. So I'm going to go into face mode. I'm going to select these two faces. G, Z, move them up like so. That one there, G, Z, move it down. And again with that one, G, Z, move it down. And that should make it look better. So let's go into object mode with the tab, right click, select auto smooth. And that should look not too bad. I'm going to put a solidify modifier on that. Go to the modifier tab, add modifier and solidify. I'm going to leave all them settings as they are and Control A. That's just about right. Now I need to put that point there at this end. So I'm going into edit mode, 7 on the numpad again, select everything, GY, bring it back. And there is actually a reason that I'm doing these on this orientation. And I'll tell you about that very soon. But I'm going to go into object mode, select the model, press Shift S, cursor to selected, then go back in to edit the model, because I can then want to go up to my pivot point, change that to 3D cursor. So now while I'm in edit mode, I'm going to close the screencast key menu. In edit mode, it will pivot around that point. So I'm going to just randomly rotate it like that. Shift D again. And I'm going to go RY. Bring that round about there. Select everything. Shift D. RY. And bring it round about there. And then we've got 4 blades of grass there. But I think I need them random lengths. So I'm going to select this one and scale it down. And then this one, scale it down a little bit less. Scale that one down a little bit more. And then we've got some randomness there. Now we need to add some color. So let's reset the UVs on that and scale it down to 0. And then add our material by clicking the material tab, plus to create a slot, and then drop down main palette. And then we just move that into a nice green sort of color there. I think it'd be nice to have each of the leaves different colors, so slightly different green. So let's just select them at random. GX, move it along a little bit. GX, move it along a little bit more. Last one. GX, bring it in even further. So we've got 4 different colors there. I think that's like that. Now, there's a reason we laid it down flat, and this is for the particle system. For some reason, the particle system applies with an additional 90 degrees on the X angle. Don't know why. It's always done it. But anyway, I digress. Let's click on our mound of earth there. And we just want to make sure that all of our orientations are correct. Yep. So let's go down to this tab here, the particle properties. Click the plus button to create another one. And we want to create a hair particle. And look at that. It creates lots of strands of hair. Now, I think that's a bit too much. So let's knock it down to 50. And that looks about right for now. But we don't want hair. We want this grass. So what we need to do is we need to go down to render, change render as object, and then down here, instance object, click the little pipette and click on our grass. And there you go, we have grass on there. But it's not entirely random, is it? It's not entirely random. So what we need to do is we need to make this a little bit more random. So what we'll do is click on the advanced tab button there. And if we look down here, we'll see a rotation drop down. Click on that. And then what we can do is we can randomize phase, which doesn't seem to do anything. We change the velocity here to global Z. Notice now that the randomized phase actually rotates everything. And we can actually get it to change all of the angles randomly, like so. And let's just adjust that. And let's bring up our number, hair length, etc. And that creates a random location for grass. But we also want height to be a bit more random. So let's have a look through here. We can change the hair length like so. Under objects, we can adjust the scale like so, randomize the scale, adjust the actual scale, and then select the random adjustment to the scale like so. But there we go. We have our grass on our plane. I need to drop the number of them down just a touch there. And we can adjust that seed and location and find something we like. So there we have it. There we have our lamppost. So let's just move this and this well off the screen like so. Go to our layout, turn on rendered mode, and let's turn my turntable on like that and press the play button. And then we have our lampposts. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this video and I hope you've learned something from it. Apologies for my rambling a little bit. If you do like it, please hit that subscribe button, hit the notification button so you know when I post again, and enjoy your modelling. Thank you very much for watching, and goodbye.